give you my...
I'd like to call the meeting to order.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here, let me give you
And
my-
our first speaker
You don't,
is going to be Councilor Ferguson.
you don't get me, I'll bring it back. You send me an email, I'll call you back.
Who's in consultation with the mayors. Okay. Carmen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe Mayor McKellion would like to be the first speaker today.
Okay. There are certain privileges that come with being the boss.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councilor Fox. As I said in the presentation, during the presentation, I've been very much involved in this. I was at the public meeting that we held, and I've met with staff on many occasions, challenged them on many issues with Carmen Corpus and Secretary. I've looked at it from the future of Port Credit and the future of the city. And yes, it is very difficult, you know, it's a very emotional issue, no question about it. And change is hard to accept. And we've gone through it over the years, trying to make a change for the good of the future of the city. And it's not easy. It certainly isn't. And as I said, this is not the most controversial issue we've dealt with. I think Councillor Prentice mentioned the runway at the airport. I don't know how many hundreds of meetings we had because people oppose the runway at the airport, etc. So this is not the most controversial. If it was just dealing with the library, there'd be no reason to move the library because it's there serving a purpose. But we have an opportunity here to make a lot of changes, and that is to move the library to a new location, which, by the way, will service a larger area, meaning more people, because the development is going to occur there, and more development is going to occur. The development south of the lake shores produce far more residents in the area. The development north, whether it's no matter what stories it is, it's more development. But then we look at the Lions Club, the pool, and the park, the Lions Hall, etc. And then there are those who want to preserve the Grey House. I remember the meeting in my boardroom in which the Grey House really started the issue. What would we do with the Grey House? Yes, it was designated, and yet it was undesignated, and it hasn't even been designated again, so it's a big question mark. And I agree with the Commissioner and with the comments that Councillor Corbison made. We have to make use, in every possible way, heritage houses. We can't afford to maintain them. In fact, often they would burn down if they're not occupied and made use of. So what we have to do is look at every heritage thing, building, and determine what use we can make of it. So therefore, what would we do with the Grey House? Well, an opportunity came up that the Grey House could be used as an addition to the library. Additional meeting space. Are we going to improve the Lions pool and the park, etc., which is not, in my opinion. Think of the money we spend on your memorial park. And by the way, I've had comments from other parks in Mississauga, such as the one in Walton, the one in Streetsville. When are you going to spend all that money on our parks? And it is a beautiful park, and we're all very proud of it. And we will spend the money eventually on the other parks as we incorporate them into the budget, and we have that. We do things as we feel we can accomplish it with the limited funding and with the tax increases that we have to pass on to the taxpayers. So I could see the removal of the library opens up that park. It allows more parking, and it is a parking problem in that area, no question about it. Yes, a lot of people can walk there, but still, it's a parking problem, especially when there's festivals held in the park. And I hope that that park will be used for many festivals over the years, because it really has been designed for festivals. It was designed for festivals, for natural use, common use, but designed for festivals. Okay, so then we looked at it as a package deal. Save the Gray House, even though it's not designated. And there are those, I'm surprised that the people who wanted the Gray House saved that were in my office, that pledged to go out and raise a lot of money and were unable to raise a lot of money, have not been heard from this morning, except Janice Holton referring to it. So I'm surprised, because there was quite a congregation in my office on that many months ago. People say, well, where the library is, that people can go to the park, the children could go to the park and use the library. Well, I don't think if the library's moved to the new location, the kids that go swimming and use the park there can also use the new library. So when you take the total package for the good of the future of Port Credit, and Port Credit is going to be more development in Port Credit. You know the growth strategy of the province of Ontario is more intensification, and they're pushing it. Funding to the municipalities will be somewhat dependent on the intensification that the city and the municipalities where intensification has been allocated to, if they agree with it and approve it. So there's going to be more intensification in Port Credit. And therefore, from the big picture point of view, and I have to look at it, I know that Councillor Corbison is faced with these large group of people in Port Credit that don't want the library moved. It's on a landfill site, yes, and we did do our homework. We didn't assume because it's on a landfill site that there were problems. We hired a consultant to look at it. He came back and said yes, but we can't interfere with the structure of the library because it could entail problems in the future. And yes, there is methane gas there now, but it's controlled. So taking all those things together, we're going to get the development on that site. There's no question about it. As to what the height is the question mark, and all that still has to be decided. But there's going to be development there. Hurontario Street, maybe you're not aware of it, but we're looking at light rail transit on Hurontario Street from the lake up to Brampton. This province has allocated us money to study it. And so we're going to have light rail transit on that route. And the strategic growth plan of the province is to put density along main corridors as well, in close to GO stations. And that property is right across from the GO station. Yes, Mentor College is a private school, there's no question about it. But it doesn't mean that the students from there will not want to use. And really today, I think we should be encouraging private schools and public schools to reduce the students that are needed to keep Canada competitive. And so they will be closer to the library. The staff has mentioned that. So here we have an opportunity. The cost has been mentioned this morning. And yes, we do take into concern the cost. But we got to look at the long-range benefit of the cost, not the short range look at it. It's the long range that we have to look. Yes, it's going to cost more. There's no question about it. In regard to the saving of the house, of the gray house, the demolition application is on our file, and it was presented to us prior to the Heritage Act being passed. So I assume it is grandfathered, that application for demolition. So, as mayor, I've looked at this, and I know that and I will be moving the moving the staff recommendation to move the library and to bring to the Port Credit area some great improvements. That library will still service the people that it's now serving when it's moved. And I think somebody said that a good walk is a good thing. It may be a longer walk for some people. So to sum it all up, after much consideration and deliberation, I don't want to look back, as somebody said, to the young people that will grow up in Port Credit and say, my, what did that council miss out on when they were given the opportunity to deal with a package that will look after the needs of the present people and serve the future generations that are going to live in Port Credit. So that is why I'm moving the recommendation of the staff. I think the staff has done thorough. They've given you the pros and cons. They've offered options in their report. But after thorough analysis, and as mayor of this great city, I am moving the recommendation that the library should move and we should get the benefit of a new library, retain the Grey House, add that facility to the library, improve the pool, improve the park. And the move is where most of the people will be in the future of the Port Credit, that enclave in the Port Credit area. Not much applause.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Next, Councillor Corbison.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And the first thing I would like to do this morning is I've already thanked Frank Giannoni for his cooperation and the Slocker group as well. But there's another group who has spent countless hours with respect to reviewing the public amenity space that is before us today, and that's the Port Credit Village Ratepayer Association. And I would be remiss this morning if I didn't extend my thanks to that group as well. I will not be supporting the staff recommendation that's before us today, and as much as I respect the mayor's comments and many of the points that are contained in the staff report, and as the mayor has suggested, there are pros to both locations, and I'm sure it was quite a challenge for the staff to write the report. And I'm going to try and be very, very brief because I think the residents this morning have articulated the reasons why I feel it should remain in its current location very, very well. I think it's important to remember, as each councillor speaks, that once again, the impetus for the report that's before us to relocate the library was a result of council, staff, the community, the developer, trying to find an adaptive reuse for the Grey House. And I think the report clearly indicates that if the recommendation does not pass today, that Grey House could be at risk. So as long as we all understand that as we're moving through the process. With respect to the redevelopment of the Lions Park, and just so everyone understands, Section 37 doesn't fall off the table if we don't relocate the library. There still is an opportunity to negotiate with Franz Locker under Section 37 for redevelopment and improvement to the Lions Park. It may not be in the form that we see today, but I still fully expect to see many improvements with respect to the Lions Park. I think it's interesting that the Future Directions document, as well as many surveys, have identified reading as the #1 leisure activity for the residents in Mississauga. So when you think about that reading aspect, then you say, well, what purpose does a library serve? I don't think where it's located today, it's what it is to me, to the people I talk to, the community that I know so well. It's a community experience. As Mr. Skio indicated, the library is the anchor for that particular Port Credit community. There's people that will go to the library, take out a book, go to the park, go to Starbucks, wherever they go. It's a true experience. Many people make a day of it. If the library were to be relocated, I would strongly suggest that it's going to be a one-stop destination. Yes, for 2 months of the summer you might have the children or the adults swimming in the pool, but for the majority of the year, it is going to be a one-stop destination. I think where the library is a great asset to 400 business partners within the Port Credit business improvement area. They benefit greatly on the people that use that library facility, and as I say, we'll stroll and make a day of being in Port Credit. We used 80% as a feedback number that did not support the staff recommendation. As I mentioned earlier, I've had well over 500 emails, phone calls, and letters over the last, I'll say at least year, with respect to this matter. Over 90% have indicated that they do not support the relocation. I, as the ward councillor, cannot continue to say, keep an open mind, please come out, look at the alternatives, give me your feedback, and then when I get 90%, and I can only go by the people that reply to me, say, please leave it where it is, ignore it at the end of the day. As the ward councillor, I cannot do that, and I will not do that. A lot of the people that contact me, and there may be some councillors that aren't aware of, we have a number of high-rise buildings that house seniors through Peel Living on State Bank Road. They are great users of this library, and I always try and keep the senior component in mind when I'm evaluating these issues. And as I say, many of them have called and said, if you move the library, I certainly won't be taking a bus to get there. And it's very, very important to my senior community that it remain where it is. We did get a petition in from Councillor Mullen's community, and I said, well, why would Lauren Park be coming to Port Credit? It didn't make very much sense to me. And again, I have to say, it's that whole experience of when you visit you're not just visiting the library, you're visiting Port Credit in and of itself. And I think it's a very integral part of the Port Credit Memorial Park. I think I've given my reasons. I have talked to my colleagues on council prior to today's meeting, and once again, I would ask my colleagues to support me and not support the staff recommendation that's before us today.
Councillor Mika?
Thank you. Well, this is quite genuinely the most difficult decision I've ever had as a councillor. A very unique historic reason. In the history of the city, I'm the only councilman that's ever lost a library. It was rather personal because it was the library behind the house I was born in. It's a library where I learned to read. In that instance, we didn't have a new library on the street. We just opened the new central branch. So Cooksville lost the only community this city had. And yet, on the other hand, you cannot look the mayor in the face and tell her she's wrong. She's absolutely right. One of the thoughts that I have with regards to this intrinsic modal development, understand what we're being told with placemaking. All great places aren't a destination in and of themselves. There's 10 other things you can do. So the idea of going to that node that would have transit at the foot of Highway 10, that has marvelous restaurants, etc., drop off your kids at 11, it makes complete sense. The difficulty I have in consultation with your counselor is, and she's quite persuasive, is after 19 years of lamenting the loss of my library, I'd be a hypocrite if I took one from someone else. And I just can't do that. And yet, I have to look the mayor in the eye and staff and say, it's It's not even a political decision, it's an emotional soul-searching where I get to exercise some demons today. And yet if the rest of council, Madam Mayor, sees it the other way, I cannot blame them. But in deference to the local councillor and my experience over 19 years, I am going to exercise some demons today, and I don't want the good people of Port Credit to go through what my community went through, and I'm in peace with that. Thank you.
And that was my library. Councillor Sato?
Thank you. Well, I will preface my remarks by saying that I will not be supporting the mayor's recommendation. I will be supporting the ward councillor in keeping the library where it is. Like Councillor Unica, I think it's a very tough decision that we are making today. And I guess if I was to decide based on the technical recommendations and the pros and cons of having a new building, saving the Grey House, which I think is vitally important as well, then I would probably be supporting the staff recommendation. But, you know, I'm going through a very similar situation in my own ward where staff want to move Meadowvale Library from a location that the community thinks is absolutely perfect because it has access, and the seniors are a big consideration in that. It has great bus access. The residents are, and I have done formal polls, and the residents are not supporting moving the library, but we will come to that when we get to it, and that will be another battle that may be fought here at the council chambers. But you know, having that situation in my own ward, I can certainly understand and have empathy for what the residents of Port Credit are facing and what the councillor is facing. You know, you can look at the fiscal viability of making the decision that staff are recommending, and it certainly is spending more money but getting a newer building, which is probably going to last longer and over the long term will be a very exciting building. I actually don't think, looking at the plans though, that the proposed building in any way adds anything to the Grey House. I don't think it complements it at all. I think it's a very disappointing design. But that's not the reason I'm making this decision. But I also think that, you know, as members of council, I think we know our communities better than anyone that's in this room. And we are there in the community on a daily basis. We're in our libraries, we listen to the residents, we hear from them all the time, not just when the issue comes up. And while I think staff have certainly done their homework in this case and have looked at it from a very pragmatic perspective, I think the pulse of the community is what we need to take a look at as we balance that pragmatic approach with the more emotional approach that we have to take as well. So I think, Councillor Corbison, I applaud you for all of the work you've done on this, and if the motion, I guess if the motion fails, you won't have another motion because it just won't be moving. But I do support you in this, and I wish you the best of luck.
Councillor Carlson?
Thanks, Madam Chair, and would like to let the residents of Port Credit know that although they have a very persuasive councillor, I wasn't thoroughly convinced until I heard Alan Steele's very unfair reference to the Wizard of Oz. And I cast my mind back to 1939, and I thought, you know, he wasn't a bad guy, he was the Magnificent Oz, and he talked about three things that come to mind. That's having some heart, and brain, and some courage. So to have a heart for Port Credit, I feel very strongly about representing an older community. I have the same sort of community in Streetsville. And we're not just bureaucrats or automatons here. We do have a heart, and we do listen to the input from our communities. And I think it's important to recognize that Port Credit came out today and other days to say that, notwithstanding all the merits of the case, that we would like to leave our library where it is. So I think that's certainly an important element in making a decision. And furthermore, I'm not much perhaps in the brain department, but my brain tells me that we can come up with some more creative solutions for this. We've some interesting suggestions today about other adaptive reuse for the Grey House. or the other properties involved. Perhaps there's some other uses we could take a look at, and I'm sure that that will fall to us to examine that thoroughly before it falls to Great House. And I think it also takes a little courage sometimes as well to look at the staff recommendations. Sometimes around the city we take a Swiss Army knife approach to things where we try to get 2 for 1 and then 3 for 1 and 4 for 1, and it's all very good until you end up with sort of a Hydra-looking thing where you've got a lot of efficiencies, but nobody supports the project. So therefore, you have to forget about it and come back with another plan that will work better. I mean, people of goodwill and creativity can get together and come up with solutions that are cost-effective, and seldom in life do things boil down to either or. I like to think that we could probably have a list of 4 or 5 different possibilities in the future. So I think your good councilor's done an excellent job to spare you this axe on the Port Credit Library, and I thank everyone for coming out today, including Alan, who, by the way, this morning my son was late for school because your big book fell out of his face on the way he's doing a project about MISSISSAUGA. I was taking your name in vain at 7 o'clock. Nevertheless, it all worked out for the best, so thank you very much.
Okay, Councilor Bear.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I think the staff and the mayor build a very strong case technically of where the Port Credit Library should be for the future. And I think that's what's made it a really difficult situation that we've been placed in to decide exactly whether it remains where it is or that it be relocated. I'm going to go back a little bit of history. Councilor Unique, I'm just a little bit older than him, but both of us grew up in the Cooksville area. But I'm not as convinced that it has to be in a specific location within a community to make it work. And I'll tell you why. The Cooksville Library's moved 4 times. It started when I was a child in the basement of a church, moved across the street to a storefront in Dundas, and then what is known now as the former Central Library was located there for many, many years. And then, as Councilor Unique has indicated, it went for a period of time with no library. Now to be in a building that's leased and probably used more than it's ever been used in the history of Cooksville or Mississauga. So I'm not, and that's probably the busiest intersection in Mississauga as well, being at Ontario and Dundas. But you have to look at the whole picture, and I think 2 things I'd like to see happen if in fact it remains where it is, and that is, historically, I think it would be great for the future of Mississauga to look back and say, you know what, they had the wisdom to preserve it in a historical location in Mississauga itself, being where it is now. And I think if we do that, I would like to explore the opportunity as well to build some history into that library about Mississauga. Just as we did in recognition of the great Councillor Frank McKechnie, when we named the facility after him and dedicated a wall to Councillor McKechnie, and I would like to see that built into this development. I also would like to challenge our staff to look at the future of the Grey House, because having lived in Mississauga all my life and 3 of the first years on this earth in Port Credit, I'd love to see that preserved. And I welcome the opportunity of the art gallery. I don't know if that's feasible or not, but I thought it was a great suggestion. And I think it would free up space here that is greatly needed right here in this building itself. So I won't be supporting the recommendation, although I think technically there's a lot of merit in moving it. However, I think we should preserve the history of Mississauga and Port Credit.
Councilor Nolan?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I will not be supporting the recommendation, but I do want to compliment staff for thinking outside of the box. I think we do challenge them to do that. We've been challenging planning to do that, so I think the report is a good report, and I compliment them. Quite frankly, I have no doubt the decision that I make today will be a decision that I can look back on with pride. I have no problem at all thinking about bringing my grandchildren down to that park and incorporating my existence down in that park with the library. I just think it's a perfect spot, quite frankly. I think that there's a lot of opportunity in the redevelopment of the library to do something rather unique, and that is try to open it up to the river. I can sort of picture one sitting there reading and looking out onto the ambience of that, and it truly makes the park a living park in my view. I don't think it takes away at all from the vision of Port Credit. Port Credit is exciting. It will continue to be exciting as it develops. And you are so lucky to be a part of it, and I feel very lucky to be adjacent to it. And Councillor Corbison also talks about the Lauren Park residents want to be a wannabes Port Credit. That's not the case. We just enjoy being able to walk through Port Credit and being part of everything that you have there. And I would compliment Fran. You know, Frank, you really are a part of the community, and you should be complimented. And I really believe that an answer to the Grey House. I know that you come up with tremendous solutions. I wish you could develop them in my ward. So my compliments to you for your patience, and certainly my compliments to you for your presentations today.
And I'd like to call on Councillor Prentice next.
Sorry, I thought I thought the mayor was on.
No, she deferred to you because she already spoke once.
That's fine. That's very nice. Thank you. And I, too, would like to thank all of you that made presentations today. I thought they were excellent. They were directly to the point, very well researched, and very respectful. And certainly as members of council, we're not wizards. I don't consider myself a wizard anyway, but I certainly appreciate residents that come out and express their opinion and are respectful of council in light of the fact that we have to make the decisions. Certainly, as I mentioned before, the ward councillor, Councillor Corbison, has worked extremely hard on this, and this is not an easy decision. It is not a black and white. Some of the things that we are faced with making decisions on are easy, and some of them are tough. And in my view, this one is a tough one. I've been this way and that way and down the middle and waiting until I could hear what everybody had to say as to how I was going to position myself on this. But I will be looking at the future of Port Credit. And I do feel the move of the library is the right thing to do, as staff has outlined in their report. I know with you that's not a popular position to take, but that's all right. I've taken unpopular positions before. I too have a library that was actually not a neighborhood library, but in fact, many years ago was a district library, which we don't classify them as that now, at one of the busiest intersections in my ward, which is Burnhamthorpe Road and Dixie Road. And it has worked extremely well. It does not have a huge parking lot. It is used frequently by transit users. And I do feel that if this library is moved, and we know in the recommendation it is conditional, and we may be back here someday looking at the fact that it in fact cannot be moved, but I do support moving it at this point for the future development of Port Credit.
And I'm calling on Hazel McCallion next, please. I'm the chair, Hazel. I follow the rules.
No, hold on the issue.
I'm not speaking, I'm the chair.
I'd just like to thank Councillor Dale for reminding me about the Cooksville Library. And one of the reasons it's so popular is where it's located, at a major intersection. I think Councillor Unica would agree with that. You see, I can't make a decision based on, I have to look at the future as the mayor of the city. I appreciate the councillor. And I appreciate the councillors making decisions based on their ward. I appreciate it. But as a mayor, I have to look at the overall future of Port Credit and the city. And I believe strongly, as mayor, that this is the right decision. For instance, we moved the Streetsville Library. It was down on Elling Street or whatever it is, way back in 1967, and we moved it to a new location, a beautiful new library that we just spent some money on renovating. And so, there's a lot of history. But I believe as mayor of the city, that yes, I have to listen to the citizens. And I think you've raised some good points this morning. But as I look to the future, and maybe I shouldn't, I won't be around in 30 years when they look at what is going to happen in the Port Credit area. But I believe we're making a decision today for the future of the Port Credit area and the city of Mississauga. And change is hard to accept. And I think I quoted at the beginning of the meeting what Henry Ford said, that if he had been consulted the people about building a car, they would have said, no, we need faster horses. And that is the problem that we face as a city. And so, in all conscience, and a lot of my friends in the audience today, I'm sure that voted for me, but I don't make decisions based on that. I make decisions on what I believe strongly, as I have on many issues in the city, that this is the right thing for the Port Credit area and the right thing for this great city, Mississauga, to take advantage of the opportunities to improve things, to have a new library, additional facility, save the Grey House. Because I can assure you, I don't have confidence that the Grey House will be saved. So, when there's a discussion about what we can do with the Grey House, I just want you to know that I don't see any possibility of saving the Grey House except with this project. So, I just say, we've moved libraries before, we've moved a lot of things before, and against the wishes of the people. Yes, we've made a lot of decisions against the wishes of the people. We have this council chambers filled with people against development. How many times? Loaded, standing room only. And yet the council has had has made the right decision on behalf of the people of Mississauga. So I just want you to know my position. I appreciate the decision that the councillors will make. But I believe, as mayor, I am making the right decision on behalf of all the citizens of Mississauga.
Okay, and the last speaker is Councillor Corbis.
And I'm not going to speak, Madam Chair. We still have another 22 items on our agenda this morning, plus a special council meeting. So I respect the mayor's comments, and I would ask that you call the question.
All right, call the question. All those in favor of the motion? Of the mayor's motion? All those opposed? I would hope that the audience goes away with renewed belief in democracy. Some of the comments that were made, I found that they were hitting me harder than a few of the comments I got when I was in Ottawa. And I think you will hopefully go away knowing two things. You have a very good ward councillor who did her work, and you've got a fantastic mayor who does have some vision. And sometimes democracy comes through, and you sit there long enough on those hard benches, you get what you want. Could someone please move the correspondence from Ms. Campbell that is attached to this? Oh, we still need a vote on Councillor Corbis's motion to approve the report. All those in favor? To move receipt. All right, sorry. Move receipt of the report. All those in favor? Carried. Takes us to item 4, Lower Driveway Boulevard Parking, Laurentian Avenue, Ward 4.